and I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
And welcome to the Chefs and Pucks podcast. It is a balmy minus 30 here in Calgary, but we're supposed to warm up here. We did survive the night after getting the emergency alert across Alberta for power usage over with this cold.
Did you have power all night long?
We did. At least
no rolling blackouts.
So. We did. I didn't notice it because I was asleep. But
you didn't have to reset any clocks this morning.
No, I did not.
There you go.
Yeah.
And if you're in a balmy minus almost 30, then what is our current minus 12 here in Kelowna?
That's shorts weather.
I mean, for the Okanagan, that is frigid, especially since we have a large body of water right here that helps make everything a little bit more humid. But this continent is cold right now.
At least the west side of it, the east side, like the sort of the on southern Ontario, New York was just getting all the snow. Canucks have had to bus out of Buffalo to Toronto to fly to Columbus.
And watching the Bills Mafia trying to shovel out their stadium is pretty amusing.
Somehow, but even freaking Kansas City was in minus 30 degree weather, like minus 30 degree Celsius. Because once Fahrenheit reaches minus 30, it's about the same as minus 30 degrees.
Yeah, that's the crossing point of Celsius and Fahrenheit. Yeah.
Yeah. So just that game last night with the Chiefs and the Dolphins was just looked frigid.
I didn't see any highlights from the game whatsoever, but I did see a post on Twitter this morning where they showed a person take a water bottle out of a cooler and immediately the water in the bottle starts to freeze as they take it out of the refrigerated cooler, which was, I don't know, ironic and amusing.
Yeah, there are definitely a few frozen beers at that game as well. So
beer slushy, yeah, there you go.
The Canucks are out of Buffalo after winning 1-0 yesterday afternoon to continue their hot road trip. And then after sweeping through New York, beating the Devils, beating the Rangers, and beating the Islanders. After losing to the St. Louis Blues when on the first game of this road trip, when everyone thought, okay, you get this win, you got a tough road ahead going through New York, back-to-back games. You've got all three of those teams are hungry, battling for playoff spots and position in the East. And then they go off and do that.
And then after that, they beat a hot Pittsburgh team as well.
Yes, they beat a hot Pittsburgh team and then go into Buffalo. 5-1 on this on this 6-game road trip so far, finishing it off in Columbus with a 10:30 a.m. start tomorrow, which I'm surprised it's still going on at 10:30 a.m. when the Canucks have had this much planes, trains, and automobile travel issues trying to get out of Buffalo. But Chris, what do you thought of this road trip so far?
Well, as with any other Canucks fan, I would say nothing less than at the very least pleasantly surprised. I don't think anyone foresaw a sweep of the tri-state area. But first time in franchise history, I'll take it. I'll take the clean sweep.
Not only was it the first time that the Canucks have gone in there and swept it on a road trip, but it's the first time they've gone in there and swept it for a season. So that's how rare that feat is for the Canucks. And then you go in, like, I knew that getting that win in Pittsburgh was huge. That Pittsburgh game was a lot of fun to watch. I think it blows my mind how we talk. There's all this talk about Jack Hughes and all the young kids, McDavid, even Petey is getting a lot of press, rightfully so. But we always forget, like, for some reason, Crosby gets overlooked now. He's old man Crosby, and just
throw some respect on Crosby's name.
And he's still arguably the best player in hockey these days.
Hence why, if you look at a lot of the like mid-season award articles on Athletic and whatnot, Crosby's right in there for the Hart right now.
Yeah, it is. He's fantastic. He was able to drag that Penguins team back into that game with the Canucks. But Petey was able to was it 4 game winners in a row?
Yeah,
4 straight
which
games.
is apparently the first time it's been done in the NHL history, if I recall.
The last time it was done was, I think it was before the NHL, and Newsy Lalonde did it back in the old-timey days. So
that sounds like a Jeff Merrick nerdy stat right there.
Right. But it's insane. Finding a way to win that game in Pittsburgh was so freaking huge, because you come up and you know how hard these morning games that it is for the West Coast teams, how hard they are. And the Canucks were able to split the afternoon games last time they had it with Minnesota and Chicago. They've got the one win on over Buffalo yesterday, and then they've got an even earlier game against Columbus after this. Again, after all these travel issues. Just going into that, I think we need to temper our expectations. I know it's Columbus, but you're looking at a team. You're looking at a team that's going to be a little fatigued from all this travel and the stress of it as well, and as well as being completely off their routine.
And I'm not sure if it's just so weird and different from other seasons being a longtime Canucks fan. But like, if you're going to complain about a 5-2 road trip, you got other problems to deal with in your life, because I will take a 5-2 road trip any day of the week.
Right? Yeah, it's unfortunate with the way that the weather has wreaked havoc on the Canucks, because they had the opportunity to get out. They were supposed to leave Buffalo last night and get into Columbus, have a nice rest day, and maybe figure out how, like, they probably have like the sports scientists and all that being able to put together a schedule that would help them be as effective as possible tomorrow. That's been all thrown out the window. So going into tomorrow's game against Columbus, I know not many people are going to be able to watch it being a Monday. And the only reason it's an early game is because it's Martin Luther King Day in the States tomorrow. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I think temper your expectations for tomorrow's game. I think that they're going to I don't expect them to come out looking at the top of their game. It's just with the schedule, the travel, everything is against them on that one. That is a quote unquote scheduled loss, even though it is against Columbus.
And funny, Dylan brought up an amusing point in the sense that this will be the first time I think we'll be playing Spencer Martin since he left the organization.
Assuming that it is Martin in net instead of Elvis Merzlikins or Daniil Tarasov. So,
there's been some rumors about Elvis wanting out or potentially wanting out of Columbus.
From what I saw, it's not that he wants out. It's just like they both have agreed. I think his representatives and the Columbus Blue Jackets have agreed that with Daniil Tarasov sort of being the goalie of the future there, as well as Spencer Martin stepping up and being sort of your prototypical 1B/backup there. It's time for him to look for a spot for him, and there's landing spots galore for him. You've got Toronto with goaltending issues. You've got New Jersey with goaltending issues. You've got Edmonton with goaltending issues. Like, it's just, even though Edmonton's on a 10-game winning streak, but those are all places that have had issues with their goaltending this year. So I think there are options out there, because there was, I don't even know if it's speculation, rumor, or whatever with Markstrom as well out of Calgary, with freaking Kevin Weeks posting an eyes emoji about Markstrom. I'm just like,
and his crazy angles of recording the top of his head.
He makes our Kevin look good for framing.
Kevin, we love you, but your framing issue sometimes, man. But actually, I know you're talking about these logical places where Elvis could go, but let's be honest. As far as pure marketing potential, Vegas, trade for Elvis Merzlikins. Elvis has left the building Jeff in Vegas. It'd be perfect.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see what happens, as Dylan brings up, because him and I have had many discussions about John Gibson being traded out of Anaheim. They are tough to trade in season, especially when they've got a larger contract. So with Elvis and Columbus, it will be something to monitor. But also, what you said, John Gibson's another name out there. That's what's might be. It's whoever's motivated enough to move on from their goaltenders and willing to take maybe a lesser price, because now it looks like there's a glutton of goaltenders on the market for teams who are willing to, who are looking.
With every team pretty much cap strapped, it also complicates that as well, because a lot of these teams that are desperate for goaltenders aren't wanting to have to they're asking for the team that's trying to offload to retain, and those teams don't want to retain. So it definitely makes an interesting and complicated situation for sure.
And Elvis Merzlikins has a 5.4 cap hit with 3 years left after this season. So again, that's not an easy contract to move. So with Gibson, Markstrom, and Elvis all look potentially on the block. I think it's gonna be who's willing to take who's willing to work, be able to work through those cap gymnastics, and who's willing to take maybe a lesser return for their goaltender. We'll see. That's probably what's going to dictate who gets traded, if any of them get traded, at least during this season. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see 2, if not all 3 of them moved in the off season, because we're going to see a bigger jump in the cap, as well as you have the more cap flexibility in the off season, and then you also have the ability to bring that goaltender in, not mid-season, in the get training camp preseason, to bring them acclimated to the systems and communicating with the defenseman as well, which is always something that gets overlooked, especially with goaltenders.
Yeah, because skaters are a lot more plug and play when it comes to trades and switching teams and whatnot. But goalies are a lot more dependent on the relationship with their goalie coach and what systems that the team employs as far as their defensive play and whatnot. So yeah, like you were saying, to try and pull off a successful in-season goalie trade is rare if you want it to be successful.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to the Canucks here, because not only did they win 1-0 over Buffalo yesterday, but also all the All-Stars were announced. So not only do the Canucks have Quinn Hughes going to the All-Star game as selected by the league, but the fan vote came in, and he's joined by Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, Barack Besser, Thatcher Demko, and then because the Canucks are leading the Pacific at this cutoff, the cutoff date was last night. Rick Tocchet is one of the coaches going to the All-Star game as well. So they have 4 skaters, a goalie, and a coach going to the All-Star game in Toronto.
And NHL, if you want this to not appear like a biased popularity contest, don't leave it up to a fan vote, because if there's one thing Canucks Twitter knows what to do, it's a fan-driven campaign to get a player to the All-Star game. Hashtag vote for Rory.
I think that it's not like any of them were not deserving either, right?
Oh, for sure.
What's nice about it. Yeah. That being said, I do think that take it off social media, please. If we're gonna do anything with this, take it off social media with all those hashtags and everything. It clogs up the social media feeds, makes it just almost unbearable to try and scroll through it sometimes. And B, it just allows for ballot box stuffing for a lot more.
Especially when I saw the one day where they're like, and it's worth double the votes, and I'm like, well, they already showed that a lot of the Canuck players were leading in the fan vote, and now you're making it worth double.
Yeah, because then Leafs fans stuff the ballot for William Nylander, for Morgan Riley, and Mitch Marner as well. So
was Marner part of that? I don't recall seeing his name on there. So I think it's just Riley and Nylander, because Matthews is already going, but I don't recall seeing Marner on that list.
I'm pretty sure Marner's on that list, because they announced a few, like the first bunch. The first bunch in the afternoon yesterday, and then they did and then they did the second batch, which was basically Canucks and Leafs, and on the pregame show leading into Hockey Night in Canada. And yes, Mitch Marner is part of that.
Okay, yeah, because I think like you were saying, I think 7 or 8 out of that 12 in the second batch, 3/4 of that was from 2 teams.
Yeah, so it's Nylander was announced in the afternoon, and then they still had like 5 Canucks and like two Leafs or 3 Leafs to announce in the after one in the evening batch. So,
and it wasn't surprised to see Leon added in there as well.
Yes. And then you're also going to have Petey, because he is going to be taking part in the skills competition. And $1 million take-all.
With this whole fan voting thing too, who knows? The Canucks might get Quinn into the competition for the skills as well.
I think he should have been in already. I know doesn't have the hardest shot or anything like that, but you already have Jack Hughes in there. Like Jack versus Quinn makes a lot of sense. So,
my dad has a solid question too, though. Who out of the Blackhawks roster do you send to replace Bedard? Because if you look at that roster list, especially with all their injuries right now, woof.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know. Like, maybe they're like, Bedard is your all-star. Well, we're gonna replace him with someone like that goes. Like, I just don't know who else is, with everyone injured and all that. Maybe. And then all the goaltending spots are taken, because I'm like, you could make a case for Mrazek, but then you're like, Mrazek's like, but I want to go on vacation.
I mean, evidence enough is just look at what was the guy from Seattle, Bjorkstrand, just his like, oh, sort of reaction,
San Diego.
Although his Instagram post where he showed like the fact that the booking was canceled was amusing.
Yeah. But yeah, it's fantastic to see that. That's not seeing having the Canucks basically dominate the voting, as well as just being deserving of going to the All-Star game, is definitely just a nice cherry on top of the first half of this season that we did not see coming.
If you would have asked me at the start of the season that I would have felt bad for Hronek not being able to join the rest of the guys, I never would have believed you. But now I'm actually a little bit bummed that, especially with the season he's having, Hronek didn't make the cut.
Yeah, if he was if he was on a lesser team, he'd be there.
Mm-hmm. if he was on the Blackhawks, he'd be a shoo-in.
Yep. With how well the first half of the season has gone, they're tops in the league in points. We're now just under 2 months away from the trade deadline, beginning of March. What do you think the Canucks approach should be for the trade deadline going into what's going to be playoffs with this team, along with Petey and Hronek needing new deals?
Like obviously with Trader Jim at as Poho, and the season that we've had, how do you not pull a trigger on like a top 6 winger, especially if the Kuzmenko experiment is not panning out as well as they liked. I know earlier in the season we talked about like a potential all-in approach. Like I'm not sure like how big of a splash you want to make, especially with how strong of a season that they've had. Like, and especially like the Dom Decisions of the world always being like, there's a regression coming. It's going to be coming. And then like we're halfway through the season and they're top 3 in the league. They're sending 5 players and a coach to the All-Star game. So like, yeah, the question is like, how much do you commit to make that push to make this season an overall success? And like at the start of the season, if we would have been happy with just making the playoffs, but clearly that bar has been raised at this point. Like I think anything short of round 2 would probably be a disappointment at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. The way I look at it is I think they've already made one trade for a rental in picking up Zadorov. I'm not sure if he's going to be re-signed in the offseason. You've got Susi signed to a multi-year deal. You've got pretty left top heavy in terms of.
The cold flexibility might allow them to maybe pursue a Zadorov if they want Zadorov in a more long-term approach.
Yeah, but I'm not like I think you can make the argument that that's already one deal that they've made for a rental. Yes, I think ideally you want to add a top 6 forward. I think ideally you want you want someone who could play both center and wing at this point, because you have, with the way that the Lotto line is playing, it's tough to not want to keep them together.
It's kind of like the Hughes-Hronek pair at the start of the season in that regard, yeah.
They're like a cheat code right now. And if you can find a way to have a second line with Mikheyev, a second line center, and then insert another player here, whether it's Kuzmenko, whether it's Höglander, or someone else, and then you add on, you've got that third line that I think you have to keep together. That third line is just so good together. Like even when like you had sort of the top players split up, you're not seeing too many of the you still have that anchor of a line that you can put out there, and they're going to put in an effort and basically dominate the play most of the time. Mm-hmm. You got to keep that there, and then you've got a good group of players in that can play in that fourth line role. Because I think not only is it the top players that have been good for the Canucks, but it's the depth that's really helped the Canucks be as good as they are right now.
Yeah, at this rate, we're gonna have like what 5, 6, 7 20-goal scorers.
So I think that's why I look at it. And there was talk about how did the Canucks get Gensel. I don't. If I'm Patrick Allvin and I'm Jim Rutherford, do I want to add to this roster to try and help this year? Yes, but I want to make sure that it's an addition that is not just a pure rental. And I see
Also,
Jake Gensel as the pure
with
rental.
how good Pittsburgh has been the last little bit. Good luck trying to convince Sidney Crosby and Dubas to let Gensel go.
But even then, I think just that idea of acquiring a player of that caliber, who's on an expiring contract that you're not going to be able to, re-sign in the offseason because they've got to get PD signed, they've got to get Hronek signed. It just doesn't make sense to me because as much as I want to see as Devin says, banners fly forever. Like, I don't think it's worth selling off a lot of what's made this team a lot of what has made this team really good, which it has been the depth, as well as you've got cost-effective players that can replace players going forwards. And you're seeing not only with the culture of the team in terms of promoting from within, and rewarding hard work and all that with Höglander and all that. I think you need to make sure that if you're making a move, it's not just for this season. I think it has to be for longer term because also with Petey, yes, he wants to be on a winner. He wants to be on a winner for more than 1 year. And if you're going to try and sell Petey to sign long term here, and as much as the lack of a new contract here is slightly concerning with him, I think he wants to. I think it's not only just he wants to see where this team's at for this year. He wants to see the pattern of calculated moves that make sure that he's going to be on a winning team for years to come.
He wants to ensure it's not just a flash in the pan.
So if you're going to sell off assets for a pure rental, I just don't know if that's I don't know if that sends the right message to PD and his camp. Which is why when just pull back the curtain here, with the talk of there was a few trade proposals, fantasy trade proposals put out there by Vancouver media over this past week. One was Kuzmenko and Podkolzin in a deal for Gensel. You'd probably have to add to get that. You're probably going to have to add a first-round pick for that. And that's steep.
Especially for a rental, yeah.
Yeah, for a rental. And then the other one was, again, I'm not sure how they'd make it work cap-wise, but it was Podkolzin, Höglander, and a first. And again, with the depth being an important role, that plays an important role for this team, especially once they've been so healthy. You need to have players who have top six potential to be able to step up, even if it's just short term. And Höglander, Podkolzin, all have that. Both have that. I just wonder what is. Yeah, I just don't know if that's the right move to make at this point. Even if that is a quote unquote fair deal, I just don't think it makes sense for the Canucks to do it. I think they need to move on from looking at pure rentals. They need to be looking at I've said this for a while now. I think if they're going to make a move, they need to find a forward version of Hronek where he's signed for at least one more season, even if they're a little bit older and it's for a UFA after the 24-25 season. But at least you have one more year of that from that player to either balance the books to re-sign them long term or re-sign them for a few more years, or at least you still get another year out of them, as opposed to just one playoff run that there's no guarantee. that you get even out of the first round.
Totally fair. Although to riff off of what you were just talking about, perfect segue, especially with the doozy of a headline that Boudreaux dropped a couple days ago. You're talking about a forward version of Hronek. What about Quinn Hughes as a center?
I wonder how actually like serious that like suggestion was. And I think it's just
like a one-time in practice as opposed to actually playing him in a game situation.
Yeah. But like honestly, even though like we don't see players switch positions very often, and it's usually from forward to defense.
Not the other way around, yeah.
Not the other way around.
Because like didn't Brent Burns start his career on like the third line in Minnesota or something like that?
Minnesota switched Brent Burns to the defense in the AHL.
Oh, okay.
But him and Byfuglien are the only two players of recent memory that have been able to make that transition and be effective at in both positions.
But like you said, it's from forward to defense, not defense to forward.
But even then, I think Quinn Hughes would be able to make that transition. That being said, he is so much more valuable as a defenseman that it just makes. I think it was more of a just
let's see what we see in a practice situation.
Yeah, type deal. I don't think how serious it really was.
Although, if I recall correctly, didn't Quinn actually in his teens for a certain amount of time actually play as a forward before he made the transition to D?
Yeah.
So there is a slight history there of him potentially being a forward. But clearly don't mess with success. Keep him as the number one D.
But yeah, it is unfortunate Kevin isn't on because he did want to yell at me for my saying that I think that the Canucks should basically hang up on any sort of offers that are get Jake Gensel for like basically Podkolzin and Höglander and a first or something like that, because in my mind that's basically 3 first-round picks, and for just a rental, because there is absolutely no like
2 firsts and a second.
Well, yeah, Höglander was his second-round pick, but I think his value in terms of what he where he's at in his development, you can make the argument that like.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
If you're redrafting that draft, you're probably looking at Höglander in the first round.
Yeah. I don't think that's a ridiculous statement to make.
Yeah. So I think the way I look at it, it's like, it's just, if you're going to make it a move and you're going to move that much value out the door, you need to make sure that you're getting at least 2 playoff runs with the player coming back.
Mm-hmm.
For me to make it worthwhile. So, and then also there's always as we talked about with Zadorov as being a bit of almost a rental as it is. The Canucks are pretty left shot heavy right now, in terms of quality defensemen. Tyler Myers is playing fantastic. I know there's talk that he might be a trade chip. I don't see it. I think he might be out. He might be he might be able to get another decent looking contract this offseason because he's a UFA, and it might not be with the Canucks. So,
although, would you willingly bring him back at $2 million a season? 2.5?
If you could get him for 2 years at $3 million, I'd do it. So I don't think he's taking less than $3 million based off of how he's playing this year, and with the cap going up.
Yeah, fair. If it had been off his play from last season, lucky to hit 2. But with the redemption he's had this season under Tocchet, a full season under Tocchet and whatnot, he's definitely turned his game around.
Because ideally, if you can have him as your third pair defenseman and you can find a way to get another sort of right shot defenseman to play. To play in the top 4, that would go a long way. And even just in the deadline right now, like if there's a way to add another right shot defenseman,
is Juleson a lefty or a righty?
Juleson's a righty. He's played really well.
So I'm kind of doing the math calculations in my brain, and I'm just like, if you let Cole go and you keep a cheaper Juleson.
I mean, that's more an off season. I think the Canucks aren't really looking at like. I think I freaking love Ian Cole. I just love how physical of a blue line the Canucks have now. Zadorov,
the pillars, if you will.
Yeah, Zadorov, Soucy, Cole. They're all willing to throw their bodies around. Juleson's a bigger body. He can throw his weight around. Hronek's not afraid to do it. That's not Hughes' game, but that's not what they want from Hughes. But they've got this big bruising defense. So if the Canucks are looking at it, I don't think they're going to be looking at adding anyone who's going to be much of a puck mover or like a true they have to move the puck efficiently. That's all they need from whoever they're going to acquire and the rest of the blue line outside of Hronek and Hughes.
Yeah, exactly. They're two really good guys at moving the puck around, and then they have their 4 bruisers.
Yeah. So if they can find a way to get the blue sky, like the Canucks can get Chris Tanev for a steal off out of Calgary, perfect. That's the type of player you want, but it's not happening.
We already burned Conroy with Zadorov. It's not happening.
If Chris Tanev's coming back to the Canucks, it's going to be in the summer, which would be fantastic too. I think he'd be welcomed back with open arms with that locker room,
as well as the fan base.
But it's at this point, I think you're looking at for the deadline. If the Canucks can find a top six forward that can play center and wing, to be able to have that flexibility to load up the top line or split it up and have a more balanced top 6. That would be fantastic. I think ideally they need to be looking at they should not be looking at rentals for that position, because I think the cost of acquisition is going to be high. So you better make sure you get your money's worth for it. And
so you're saying Winnipeg approach?
Yes, I think that's very much something that they need to be looking at, and it just doesn't. The one I know Dylan put in the comments, Adam Henrique off the Ducks. I think he's a rental, so I don't know if that doesn't make sense for me.
What about if it's like a rental you think you could realistically convince to sign?
That's the problem is like if they're in that second line role, I just don't see the cap space as well as being able to fill out the rest of the roster properly.
Fair,
right? Because Casey DeSmith needs a new contract as well after this season, and are you willing? It depends on where they feel on Arthur Seelovs, but if not, having a good 1-2 punch in net has been huge for the Canucks this year. It's not the thing about the NHL and hockey in general. It's having the best. You have to put together the best team. You have to have the right puzzle pieces in the right spots. And if you don't, even if you have quote unquote the best players, you're not going to win.
Yeah, it's not all skill, chemistry. Yeah.
Chemistry and just making sure everyone knows their role. Like they had yesterday, Dan Murphy had Patrick Albion on between the first and the second periods, and they brought up Connor Garland and how that third line has basically created a role for him, and he now no longer wants out. Right? Mm-hmm. So when you put players in positions to succeed and put players in positions where they know their role, it goes so much. It goes long. It goes much farther than having just all the best players.
Yeah, because
for the most part.
And Connor was playing on the third line for the most part under Bruce as well. It was just that he wasn't, I guess, having chemistry and feeling like he was clicking and had a role that felt like maybe home for him. Like clearly he's feeling a lot more comfortable with Joshua and Bluger on that third line. Like they've just had insane chemistry this past like 20 or so games.
Oh, just ever since they were put together. But even before that, when they had Pia Suter there,
Mm-hmm.
like that, the Joshua Garland pairing with whether it's Suter or Bluger has been fantastic this whole season.
Yeah.
And so when you have that, that's why it's not necessarily about going out and getting a Gensel or going out and getting someone like a big star or making a big splash at the deadline. It's being smart about who you're picking up, which is why I'm making the ask for not just a big splash rental. If you're going to get a rental, maybe you're trying to buy low on someone who you think can fill that top six role. So then you're giving up similar to Zadorov, a third and a fifth, or something along that type of trade capital.
Like a fresh start with higher ceiling potential sort of situation.
Or someone you know can fit that. But they also got Pia Suter in that second line center role right now. And that line really hasn't truly clicked just yet. Mikheyev, Kuzmenko, and Suter. But I still think there's potential there for that to click. Ideally, you want to upgrade on Suter because I think as I said, you could bump Suter down into that third line role, and I don't think you're going to be too upset with the results, even though Bluger has played well there. Suter also showed well early in the season there as well. But Suter at center with on that fourth line with whether it's been Höglander, PDG, or Lafferty has been really good as well. So if you can find, again, it's finding the right fit, not necessarily the big name that needs to happen here. And if you're going for a big name, then you need to make sure that you're getting your money's worth, which is why I'm asking for, and I think, and this is where I think actually where the Canucks are going to go too. I think they are looking, I think the Gensel one was more, the Gensel rumors, speculation, however you want to call it, I think came out of more he's from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's all about the Pittsburgh
and Alvin. That was more speculation on that. The Canucks there were, I think, rumors that the Canucks were interested in Jordan Greenway out of Buffalo. He fits that as well, but he doesn't play center. So I'm not sure, he's more another sort of Joshua type player. Another player who's going to be middle
six sandpaper.
Yeah, middle six sandpaper who can jump up and be a forechecker in the top six every once in a while. That filling that role the way Höglander has, PDG has at times. That type of player. Mm-hmm. So I haven't really looked around, seeing who's available, who I think might be available, that would fit what I think the Canucks are looking for if they're going to make a big splash for a second line center / winger. But it just, because the big names you think about are Gensel, you've got Elias Lindholm, but those are all, again, both of those guys are rentals. You're not going to be able to afford them after this season. So what makes, I just don't see if the Canucks were already in had PD locked up, had Hronek locked up, and then they could just maybe move out a bigger contract here or there to make it work, then maybe going the rental route makes more sense.
Yeah.
But for me, the issue is there's too much uncertainty here, and you need to make sure that you're building not only a team that can build off of this awesome first half of this season and be a contender this year, but for 2-3 years for going forwards as well, because that's going to be able to convince P to sign long term.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And then I think we've covered a lot of the Canucks stuff here, other than maybe the PD contract, and we can use this to bridge over to the Nylander contract that was signed last week. But before that, I look at that. I still think PD's going to sign. I just don't know if it's going to be a 2 or 3 year deal versus a 8-year deal. That's where I'm at with PD. Before we move on to Nylander, where do you think that?
So you're wondering whether he's going to take a Matthews approach or a Nylander approach.
Exactly. That's actually where I think it's at. It's like, and that's why you think you need to start selling PD on whether or not it's more than just a short-term boom year for the Canucks. You have to start selling him on the long term, because if you can get him signed long term, that's going to go a long way to helping this team become a perennial playoff team, perennial contender going forwards.
Yeah.
Because the biggest worry you have with the Canucks right now is that this could potentially be the 21-22 Flames season, where they get the one awesome season and then you lose, then you have a couple key players. Yeah. So if you can find, that's why it's key to make sure that PD is happy, because the team is winning and the team looks like it's going to be a winner for a while.
Yeah. But also, it kind of makes you just wonder and hum and haw, just in the sense that he's had his 3-year ELC, he's had a bridge deal. He sees the success that Matthews has had with doing shorter term deals as well. Like, it kind of really does make you wonder if he might actually prefer a 3 or 4 year deal as opposed to a 8.
And I wonder if that's what we're going to start seeing a little bit more of from the top end players, instead of locking yourself in long term
into my contract sucks areas,
or just you with the cap. Like, now that we're over the flat cap era, we're gonna see the cap grow again here, partially just because of inflation more than anything else. They're going to want to make sure that they're getting paid. So yeah, with let's transition over to the William Nylander deal. He's coming off this year was the last year of his 6-year deal, where his cap hit was, for most of it, was just under $7 million, other than the prorated first year after he signed basically in December. And he's now an $11.5 million player on the cap with a full no move clause for 8 years. What did you think there, Chris?
I mean, he's put in the work to earn that deal. It's really kind of hard to deny him it. I guess where my kind of hesitation or curiosity was more so based was, how does Toronto structure their team when they seemingly are paying their big four a substantial percentage of their team roster allocation for cap space? So I think Willie deserves what he got, and he clearly put in the effort to get it. But I guess my question is not necessarily on the Willie side of things. It's more, how does Toronto move forward given that contract?
That's my big issue too. And then, as we talked about earlier, it's not necessarily about always having the best players. It's building the best team and having the right puzzle pieces. When you look at the Leafs going forwards, next year is going to be, they're going to have 4 players making 10 million or more on the cap. The lowest cap hit of those 4 players will be Mitch Marner at 10.9 million. So it's going to be very tight on the cap for them to build up a team after that without getting a bargain bin shopping and getting lucky with some of that. But after that, John Tavares' deal is up, Mitch Marner's deal is up. So that they're going to get some cap flexibility
at the end of next season. That those 2 deals
at the end of 24-25.
Okay.
So they've got one more. They're going to have one year where they're paying those 4 players basically $11 million.
And yeah, with the current, or I guess next season it's going up 4%, but still, that's like almost half of your cap space tied to 4 players.
Exactly, which is why again, it's about building the best team as opposed to just keeping the best players. And I think the issue I have with this deal is that I think Nylander should have been traded in the offseason. Not that he's a bad player, not that he can't be the part of the solution in Toronto, just that
they could have gotten the most for him.
They could have gotten the most for him because he had a modified no trade clause where he only had a 10-team no trade list. Meanwhile, Marner has a no movement clause. And I'm not sure what you're getting for John Tavares at this point in his career. He is 33 years old right now, let alone what's going to happen and then just continue on to get older, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have and they've only just got out of the first round once with this group of players. And it just feels like Treliving's just doing the same old thing that same blueprint that Dubas had, is pay the top 4 and hope that you can find bargain bin options for the rest of the roster. And I don't think that. So
then that makes me wonder: is that actually the Shanna plan then? Because if he's the common denominator, is that actually the Shanna plan?
Yes. But yeah, after I think that what will really make or break my opinion on what's happened here with Nylander and what Treliving is going to be doing is what happens with Marner. Because if he's able to trade Marner and get a decent return for him,
dangle him as a rental, yeah.
Well, the other thing is he's got a no movement clause, so you're going to have to work with Marner to say, where do you want to go? And you're going to have to find a way to make it work cap-wise for someone who's making 10.9 on the cap and is going to be a UFA going into the 25-26 season. So he's going to need a new contract, which he's probably not going to want to make less than that. He's been a top end player in the league this whole time. He's been up there in the Selke conversation for the last season too. He's not going to want less than that. So again, you're trading a player who's going to be a very, very good player, but the contract's going to be something to be the uncertainty of what his next contract's going to be is going to really sort of negate any a lot of the value that you could get for him. So
sell him on playing with Bedard, man. Sell him on it.
And he's 20. Marner's 26 right now. So when that deal comes up, he will be. Let's see here. He'll be 28, 29
at the end of the deal.
So yeah. Because he'll turn 27 beginning of May. So he'll be 28. He'll be 28 when his current deal runs out. And he's probably going to want to get another at least 6-year deal out of that, out of his neck with his.
Yeah, basically something that gets him to his middle 30s.
Yeah. He's going to want a 6 to 8 year deal, because once you're not going to want to have another UFA deal to sign if you're in your early 30s, because that's when teams start to really play hardball with UFAs is at that point.
Yeah, when you start to actually show real regression in your overall stats, and then not only that, but just with how the NHL has kind of trended over the past decade or two, that's where you get squeezed out of the league. You used to be a high paid player and you don't have that magic anymore, and then all of a sudden, sorry, man, we don't have a spot for you.
Yeah. So I think I just look at that and I felt like this was a missed opportunity to reshape the Leafs. Trillium had an opportunity to reshape the Leafs here and sort of get some different puzzle pieces. And now I think it's the trade for Marner is going to basically be that for the Leafs, because Tavares. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we either see Tavares retire or we see him sign for a lot less. But he's not going to be he continues to play well, but he continues to just slowly deteriorate from the player he was.
Mm-hmm.
And there's players that just don't. The Leafs fans are not wanting him to be a center anymore. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see what goes on here. But yeah, that's. I think you and I are on a very similar wavelength. Whether it's not necessarily that the deal is bad for Nylander, it's just where the Leafs are at.
Yeah, it's the impact of that contract as opposed to the contract itself. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and then the other big news that came out over the past week was the Cutter Gauthier trade from Philadelphia to Anaheim after Cutter Gauthier decided he no longer wanted to play for the Philadelphia Flyers. So Cutter Gauthier goes to the Anaheim Ducks for a second-round pick in Jamie Drysdale.
The anti-Lindros. Instead of bringing his services to Philly, he wanted out of Philly.
Yes. What did you think there, Chris?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't know too much about this player overall. Like, I'm definitely not one of our prospect gurus, if you will, on this podcast. But obviously, I know that he's a highly touted prospect. And I didn't really know any of the rumblings of what was happening in the background. But from what I have kind of pieced together, it seems like most of his gripe was with the old regime, not necessarily the current regime. But I don't know if he just felt like he was already burned by the organization or what have you, or there was maybe already too many broken promises or what. None of us know all the details, but clearly something to the point where he was permanently disgruntled with the organization and just didn't want to play for him and kind of forced their hand into trading him.
Yeah. And I cannot wait for him to turn pro, and I cannot wait for his first game in Philadelphia.
Oh, the booze. It's going to be glorious.
The town that boots Santa Claus now has a personal gripe with a player coming in. It's going to be great. I want once we know when that game is, that game is circled.
Get those decibel meters ready.
I'm making sure that I'm able to watch that game. Oh, it's going to be good. You think Flames fans booing Adam Fox is good has been there. You think Islanders fans booing John Tavares is over the top. Just wait till Cutter Gauthier goes back to Philly. It's going to be fantastic. And to those out there who are getting upset with players being booed by other fan bases, embrace it. That's the spice that you want in hockey. That's the spice that you want in sports. That's a good side of pro wrestling that you need in sports.
You don't want pettiness to be the main ingredient, but it's that Parmesan that goes on top, man.
God, because I absolutely love it when Toronto goes to UBS Arena and you have all the Islanders fans still booing John Tavares. It's fantastic. It's as a player, as someone who played hockey and was actually, I consider myself lucky enough to be public enemy number one in a small in Claresholm, Alberta for one season. small town Alberta, and the whole town would boo me. It was
You were
fantastic.
that guy, were
I
you?
loved it. Oh yeah. It was fantastic, and I know Dev had a couple times where he got booed pretty vehemently, and he loved it too. Like it's some of the best. That's the spice that you want, because it just makes for a much better atmosphere. Like you can have
my dad brought up an example. My dad brought up an example that you missed, or any arena that Bettman goes to.
But it's just like you can have the best game, like some of the most entertaining game you can, but if it's in a quiet arena, it's not the same. Let's go back to when fans came back to the arenas after the pandemic, and how just the spine tingling, just the feel of it, just embracing
having a full arena with full volume again. Yeah.
And Cutter Gauthier got a bit of a he's a bit of a rat. Hell, him and Jonathan Lekaramaki got into it in the handshake line after the gold medal game in the World Juniors. Like, I expect him to be. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him embrace it, and I really, really hope he does.
Fully embraces being the heel. Yeah, that would definitely up the entertainment factor if he leans into that.
So good. But yeah, I think it's as you said, Chris. I think it was definitely like more from the previous regime. And then also just not sure. Like, I think it just a little bit of everything just led up to it, and he's like, you know what? You sometimes you have that feeling. You're like, you know what? I know that this other they've changed regimes and everything. I still just can't get that feeling out of it. Just can't get that feeling out of my gut. I think it would feel much better moving on, right?
No.
Everyone's had that. So you just gotta. I think that's where he was at. That being said, I think Philadelphia made out really well with that deal, getting a second round pick and then getting a former first round pick, top 10 in Jamie Drysdale, who's he's a right shot defenseman, can really skate. He could be the guy that going forwards is the sort of like Philadelphia's puck mover that they can build a more of and then have like their pillars around him, similar to how the Canucks have built their blue line.
So you're basically saying that he'll be Philly's Quinn Hughes?
I didn't want to say it that way because it's just like I hate like when you make those comparisons. It's just like puts too much pressure on those on the players. But
yeah,
like that type of
maybe not this season Quinn Hughes, like last season Quinn Hughes.
he could be like Morgan, like he could be like a Morgan Riley type defenseman for
your number one puck mover offensive defenseman. Yeah.
Yes. And then you can build around that they've already got Travis Sanheim, who's a really good defensive defenseman. They've got a few other players that they can build around. But I think it's a very, very good for Daniel Briere to get Drysdale and to help build that blue line, because I think he's talked about that in the past where he wants to build blue line out. Yeah,
and I don't want to delve into this for too much, like just two sentences really, but now that Drysdale's being traded away, Zegras lost his best friend, and now he's sad and wants out of Anaheim.
I think that's even it, though. I think it's just like you look at the type of team that Verbeek wants to build. He brought in Cutter Gauthier. He's got Mason McTavish. Leo Carlson's the center now. Like McTavish and Carlson are most likely your 1-2 centers. Zegras isn't necessarily your north-south physical in-your-face player. He's more of an east-west flash and dash type guy. That's not necessarily the little ball of hate that Pat Verbeek was as a player. I think he's trying to build that. So I know you still need your flash and dash players, but they still need to be able to play that in that way. And I don't necessarily see Zegras necessarily wanting out at this point. although he is injured, out for 6 to 8 weeks. So I think it's just more of a you're now seeing Verbeek really put a stamp on this team as his team.
Mhm.
And I definitely could see Zegras being traded in the offseason, but it will definitely have to be a very right deal for Verbeek.
A quote unquote hockey trade.
You could see it, yeah. I know Dylan put up there saying Kuzmenko probably goes in the first for Zegras. Zegras is not a talk. Like they're all the talk about Kuzmenko not being a Tocchet player. Zegras is not a Tocchet player.
Yeah, no. When I saw him put that in the chat earlier, I'm like, it's amusing, but he's just throwing stuff out there and seeing what sticks to the wall.
But I think both teams are going to look good coming out of that trade. It's going to be one of those ones that it's going to be a win-win for both teams, I think. Mm-hmm. And then for the rest of us, when Cutter Gauthier goes back to Philadelphia, we'll be the real winners.
And speaking of winning, winning, the Edmonton Oilers are white hot now.
10 game win streak. They've basically caught up. They've caught up to LA in terms of the third place in the Pacific Division. I mean, they're not even that far back from Vegas now, who've also fallen off a little bit. So it's all the talk about Edmonton being done. They're 6 points back of Vegas with 4 games in hand, and they're 1 point back of LA with same games played. So yeah, don't sleep on. Again, I think we were all sort of like, oh, we wrote off Edmonton. We were wrong there.
They got waist deep into digging that grave, and then they're like, what the fuck am I doing? And they climbed themselves out of it.
But it's also big for the Canucks to make sure that they win this division, because I think we're going to see the Oilers finish in the 2 or 3 spot in the Pacific Division, even after that horrendous start.
So you're saying don't worry about a Canucks Oilers first round, because that is probably something I don't want to deal with in the first round.
That'll be a second round matchup, Chris, hopefully.
Yeah, please, hockey gods.
That being said, just throw Brock Besser out there. He'll score all the goals against
Hopefully that magic continues on.
But also, can't remiss that the Seattle Kraken are 9-0-1 in their last 10 as well.
Oh damn! That went under the radar for me. I didn't know that they were that hot.
Yeah, so it's the Pacific Division mushy middle at this point is getting very, very interesting.
Starting to firm up, and it looks like Calgary's on the outside looking in.
Yeah, unfortunately for the Calgary Flames, who are, they're only 2 points back of the Oilers for the second wild card spot. But
as far as just overall trajectory for this season, like, I don't know, there's too much momentum going, especially if Seattle is as good as you're saying that they are. Like, what room does that leave for Calgary as far as the wild card hunt, right?
Well, if you look at the Pacific Division right now, the Canucks have won 5 straight. The Oilers have won 10 straight. The Kraken have won 9 straight. The Flames have won 3 straight. The Kings have lost 8 straight. They haven't won in the calendar year of 2024. And
I did not realize LA had gone that cold. I knew they were pretty damn good like earlier on in the season, but man, they have fallen off then.
And then the Golden Knights have lost 1 straight, but are 3-7 in their last 10.
Mm.
So that mushy middle, that's why the Canucks finding a way to win having such a great sort of great road trip has been huge for them, so that they stay out of that battle that is about to ensue.
Yeah.
So,
Let second, third, and the 2 wild card spots fight for the slotting, but first is a little bit more, at least in some form of concrete right now.
Right now, you never know. Yeah, Canucks have 61 points. Vegas has 53. LA Kings have 48. Oilers and Kraken have 47. And the Flames have 45. The Oilers and Kings have both only played 39 games. Kraken 42. The rest, Canucks, Knights, and Flames have played 43 games.
And I wonder, just because I'm looking at the standings as well, I wonder like if St. Louis and Arizona have the ability to make it interesting since they're only 1 point back of the Flames.
Yeah, well, they're only 1 point back. You've got Nashville at 49 points as well. So like it's that the battle for the playoffs in the West is going to be a lot of fun to watch going forwards.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I definitely did not expect Minnesota to be struggling this hard.
Yeah, they're a team. They're a team to watch. They don't necessarily have too many big name rentals, or even players with like one more year after this year under contract left to potentially sell off. They've got a lot of longer term deals, so I'm not sure what they can do other than just hope that they can rediscover the magic that they had last year going forwards. So
are you basically saying they're Buffalo West?
A little bit, yeah. When you look at Minnesota's cap situation, I think next year's one of the tougher years on the Suter and Parise buyouts. That has been part of their issues. But they've got Kaprizov, who's got 2 more years left after this year, but they're not trading him. They just signed Matthew Boldy to a long-term extension. Zuccarello, they just signed him to a 2-year deal after this year, so I don't see them trading him. I think he's got a no movement clause anyways. They just re-signed Marcus Foligno, I believe. Yep, and Ryan Hartman to new deals. And then you've got Joel Eriksson Ek, who's got 5 years left after this season on a pretty big deal. So a lot of their players that they could quote unquote sell, I'm not sure they want to or can with the contracts that they have. The blue line's a little bit more. Jake Middleton would be a fantastic ad for any playoff team. He's big, he's tough. He's got 1 more year left at 2.45 after this season, so he could be someone. John Merrill's always is someone that they could sell, but then they've got Spurgeon and Brodin, who are both injured right now. So I'm not sure, and that they're basically key players that they're not going to trade. So they're not going to be able to really do too much. Just hope that maybe some progression from Marco Rossi and Brock Faber next year can really help them going forwards, as well as being healthy, because that's really been their big issue this year is they haven't been healthy.
Yeah. Spurgeon being out has been a huge loss for them.
Yeah, and they just got Kaprizov back, so. All right, so I think we've gone an hour and 15 here, Chris. We've covered a lot. We just got the one last question. Don't worry, I got it covered this time. You got the Canucks 5-sim versus the Avs 5-sim. You've got Jonathan Drouin, Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, along with Makar and Taves versus the Canucks 5-sim of Petey, Miller, Besser, Hronek, and Hughes. I know we're both Canucks fans, but if we could find a way to have those two face off when it like
an alternate All-Star game. Boom.
Alternate All-Star game. Why not? Because I think that I think those are the two top five-man units in the NHL right now. And as much as you've got MVP candidates, you've got Norris candidates, and such a good supporting cast. This may not be a question more than just, man, could you imagine just a thought exercise of could you imagine, the alternate All-Star game of them playing against each other. You can even throw the goalies in there. Like, I know the Canucks, Demko runs Georgiev over left, right, and center at this point, but that'd be so good to watch.
Mm-hmm. No, that would be entertaining as hell. It would be like a very fast, intense, like it would be an awesome game to watch for sure. If it was just basically those lines going head to head all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think if you look at it, you're as good as PD is, you've got McKinnon's season this year is fantastic. I think you have to give him the edge, right? Over PD, unfortunately. But then I think you're giving, I think it's Miller over Rantanen this year.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Whereas in past seasons, it definitely was the opposite. I would have given Rantanen the edge in that. Yeah. But no, Miller is last season and this season has edged out him in that regard.
And then it's Besser over Drouin, and then that's a big gap there in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a gimme for Best in that regard.
Yeah. And then you got Makar versus Hughes again.
I mean, those two are going to be going neck and neck their entire careers at this point.
Yeah. I think that's basically a saw-off, even though I think right now Hughes is having the better season, and I think he's basically at this point he's the Norris winner right now.
Yeah,
but Makar is still Makar. So
and Makar is having a bit of an off year this year. Like he in between being injured and then not just being at Quinn Hughes's same level this season. Yeah, you have to give it to Quinn this season, but yeah, I think long term over both of their careers, they're going to be neck and neck as far as being in the top 3, top 5 defensemen in the league for sure.
Yeah. And now then it comes down to Devon Toews versus Hronek.
I mean, in past seasons, I probably would have given it to Toews, but how can you not give it to Hronek this season? But like you said, we're clearly biased Canucks fans, so.
And Dylan, you asking why we're using Drouin over Nichushkin is because that's the line. The line right now for Colorado is Drouin, McKinnon, and Rantanen. So Nichushkin is actually on the second or third line right now. And he was even out with an illness last night, but he's not been on that top line of late.
But then even Dylan conceded in his next comment. Either way, Besser's still better.
Yeah. So even if the defense is a saw-off, because that's kind of where I'm at right now. Hronek and Toews basically the same. I think Hronek's having the better season. Toews has had the better career, the last couple seasons. Makar and Hughes are a saw-off. You've got McKinnon better than Petey, but then you've got Miller and Besser better than Rantanen and Drouin this year. Even if you say Miller and Rantanen are equal for similar reasons to Makar, the defense, the Besser over Drouin or Nichushkin, whoever you want to put there, I think just makes it basically either a saw-off or slight edge to the Canucks.
Yeah, if this was last season, Besser, I would say it probably would lean towards the Avs. But the fact that Besser is having the season he's having, and especially if the comparison in this matchup is Drouin, yeah, it's not even close.
Yeah. Well, we've gone way too long. especially for us two there, Chris. So
yeah, normally we're good at wrapping these up after 60 minutes, but I guess we just went a little bit on a Canucks tangent up until I think 45 minutes in. So maybe let's tone it down on the Canucks segment.
There was some goalie trade talk in there too.
True. Yeah.
That actually might have been the tangent. But where can we follow you there, Chris?
I'm on all the social medias at Schneids, SCHNEIDZ.
I am Beardy Canucks 03 on Twitter. You can follow Kevin at KEVOLE on the social medias. Tyler is on the X app at TNOLOBLE. You can follow Devin at Gordhow09 on the X app. You can follow us on the X app, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch at Ships and Pucks. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you next time. We're not sure when. Just again, schedule is hard to nail down. But
we're herding cats, but we're doing our best, guys.
All right, and hopefully Tyler will be on soon. Hopefully Devin will be on soon, and hopefully Mr. Traffic himself, Kevin, will be on soon. So we will see you next time, and stay warm out there, friends.
Bundle
Bye
up.
for now.